Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take the source material you trust us with, tear it open, and stitch together the most revealing, often shocking insights.
Today we are wading into some very dark water. We're diving into K.M. Moronova's second book in the Dark Forces duet, an incredibly high-stakes, high-octane narrative titled My Blade, Your Back.
And our mission today is, it's pretty complex because this world is anything but simple. We need to navigate this dense, brutal architecture of a fictional underground operation, the Dark Forces.
And then unravel that toxic yet alluring central relationship between the two protagonists, Mori and Morphine.
Exactly. And on top of that, we have to track the sheer density of the conspiracy, the, chemical enhancement, and the ultimate betrayal that just drives this whole plot at a terrifying speed.
It really does. But before we get any further, we absolutely have to acknowledge the critical content warning that's embedded directly in the source material itself. This is not casual fiction.
Not at all. It's a dark military romance, and the setting is intentionally designed to be deeply, deeply disturbing. The fictional depravity we're analyzing here is, it's extreme.
We really need to stress this for you, the listener. The source explicitly warns about physical violence, explicit sex scenes, morbid humor, explicit war, death, explicit language, sexist behavior,
War trauma, PTSD, murder, mentally unwell characters, self-harm. The list goes on. Heavy substance abuse, forced substance abuse, even abuse of corpses.
So it's critical to grasp that the world of the Dark Forces is just absolute unmitigated darkness.
And that severity really sets the entire tone, doesn't it? It dictates the stakes for every single character.
It does. Our protagonists aren't your conventional heroes. They're highly specialized, chemically altered weapons forged in this extreme darkness. Which brings us to the book's cover and its central defining question. Who are you really?
And that question lands with this crushing weight on the central protagonist, Morphine or Emery. She's struggling with total amnesia.
So she has no idea who she was, only who the Dark Forces have, forced her to become.
Right. This existential crisis is the hinge upon which the entire narrative turns.
So let's start at the beginning of that dark reality in Section 1. The Dark Forces and the Fury Squad context. We have to understand the geography and the organizational structure because it dictates the psychological landscape for everyone involved.
Absolutely. This operation is so far from a standard military unit. It's this completely fictional underground network that uses bases in real-world settings, which immediately gives it this chilling sense of plausibility.
Yes, and we see a very clear split operation. The primary hub, which seems to manage most of the logistics, is the California base. It's described as larger and crucially warmer than its more austere Alaskan counterpart.
But the geography is almost less important than the architecture, right? The internal hierarchy is literally split by location within the base itself.
Exactly. You have the elite, high-risk, chemically altered soldiers, our protagonists, and they're the Dark Forces soldiers who operate deep under the base.
And then you've got the upstairs soldiers who are handling all the mundane day-to-day stuff above ground.
And the rule governing these two classes is just ruthlessly enforced. Interaction between them is absolutely forbidden.
So they're functionally segregated. They're seen as, lethal contamination that has to be contained.
Pretty much. Contained and deployed only when necessary. This creates immediate paranoia and this intense closed-off culture.
And operating within the under is the elite yet functionally disposable Fury Squad.
And the source material just hammers home the lethal nature of their work with that one phrase, "No one lasts very long on Fury."
And that isn't a boast about being the best, is it? It's a warning. It's about the high probability of termination, either on a mission or by, internal means.
The turnover is alarmingly high. It reflects both the severity of their ops and the internal conflicts that are constantly threatening to just tear the squad apart.
So we should probably introduce who's actually on this volatile team.
Right. The main characters are Mori, whose civilian name is Cameron, and Morphine, who is Emery.
Then there's Thomas. He's second in charge, described as organized, intelligent, strict, sort of the foil to Mori's chaos. But he's also got this surprising sense of humor.
And the mullet. Can't forget the mullet.
Of course. Then we have Gage, who's newer compared to Mori and Thomas, and he hides everything behind this very performative fake grin.
And we learn pretty early on that another member, Caden, was terminated on a prior mission, which just underscores that chilling reality behind the "no one lasts very long" rule. It's a group where high-level competency is a necessity, but expendability is basically guaranteed.
A structure like that needs some kind of internal enforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the terrifying Riot Squad.
Right. They operate on the Eastern Shore as almost this distant, shadowy threat. They're essentially the organization's internal execution team.
They're not investigators. The text is very clear on that.
Not at all. They're described chillingly as terminators. Their sole purpose is to hunt down and terminate traitors, regardless of rank Dark Forces soldiers, even the standard upstairs soldiers.
So Riot is the ultimate expression of the Dark Forces' paranoia. They are the cleanup crew for organizational failure.
It demonstrates that nobody, no matter how elite, is safe from the organization's swift and very final judgment.
The knowledge that Riot Squad exists, combined with the extreme danger of their missions, it just means that life in the Under is a continuous state of punishment and conflict.
This isn't just basic training, it's psychological conditioning through mandated cruelty.
And the specifics are just shocking. Gage and Thomas describe the whole.
A literal deep, dark pit where the lieutenant makes the squad sit for a full day as punishment. This isn't just isolation, it's a form of sensory deprivation and physical confinement designed to break them.
To reinforce the primal conditions they live under. And the aggression is constant, even between allies.
Oh yeah, the frequent violent physical conflict, especially between Maury and Thomas. They fight until blood is shed before the others have to step in.
So this mandated spontaneous aggression is part of the conditioning. It keeps them sharp, volatile, and perpetually suspicious of everyone.
It's a total pressure cooker. And overseeing all of this are the officers, who are simultaneously part of the structure, but also, as we find out, deeply compromised. Lieutenant Eric is the temporary leader of Fury, usually working under Captain Bridger and General Nolan.
And Captain Bridger is presented as the highest authority figure the soldiers actually interact with. He's described as analytical, someone holding the world's darkest secrets.
The implication is he's the strategic mind behind the whole operation. He knows the true scale of the conspiracy and the full nature of the human experimentation taking place.
What's so fascinating is how the Dark Forces is designed to be this mirror image of a legitimate military, but it just replaces core concepts like duty and honor with absolute cruelty.
And it replaces loyalty with necessity and chemical control. The environment of constant danger, mandated secrecy, and enforced psychological abuse ensures that these soldiers can't form normal human bonds.
Which brings us directly to the volatile connection between Maury and Morphine.
It's astonishing, really. In a world defined by this kind of cruelty and control, the most dangerous element is the deep, complicated emotional connection between these two traumatized soldiers.
This is Section 2. The toxic attraction. And it's rooted entirely in guilt, lies, and a shared traumatic history.
Emery's condition, her complete amnesia, is the defining trauma of her existence as Morphine. She is an ex-criminal turned secret soldier, but she retains nothing of her past because of a traumatic event during the trials.
Yet, despite that emptiness, she still has this absurdly attractive personality and that crucial, morbidly comedic nature that hints at her darker past.
She's constantly wrestling with this internal paradox. She feels an immense nothingness, this sense of incompleteness, and she even wonders if her eyes were once cold, like Maury's.
The source describes her trauma as feeling like a massive, vital part of her soul has just been erased. It leaves her profoundly disoriented, even while she's operating as this high-functioning killer.
And this sense of incompleteness is directly linked to the secret that Cameron, or Maury, is so desperately hiding. Emery has a scar on her temple.
And we learn that scar is the result of Cameron smashing her head with a rock during the trials.
Right, and we should probably give some context to the trials. They weren't just standard soldier initiation.
No, they were designed to break them, to test their limits for survival and obedience under extreme duress.
So why did Cameron resort to that kind of violence?
It was an act of twisted necessity. He smashed her head to prevent her immediate death, which would have happened if she continued to resist or if the trial masters finished her off. He saved her life.
But the trauma inadvertently caused her complete amnesia.
Exactly. And that is the incredible tragic irony. He committed an act of violence out of love, or at least necessity, and that violence became the perpetual wall between them.
So his entire persona Maury is now built on that overwhelming guilt and the need for suppression. Precisely. He maintains a stone-cold facade in this wall of ice between them because he believes he must be cruel and distant to protect her from the horrible truth of her own past, which he triggered.
But the source material gives us deep access to his internal monologue, which constantly betrays that coldness. It's just an exploration of deep, hidden agony.
It really is. He observes her constantly, noting the absence of her real smile, and he inwardly craves to comfort her, especially when she's vulnerable during nightmares.
He finds comfort in these minute, forgotten details. He misses her floral scent, which he calls his comfort my only home. He remembers the days she always kept her waist-length hair braided.
This internal conflict, the desire to comfort clashing with his self-imposed mandate to push her away, is emotionally agonizing. It suggests that the stone-cold killer persona is just as much a prison for him as the amnesia is for her.
And yet, despite this massive internal wall, their attraction is the most powerful force in the entire narrative. Their chemistry is tangible, a physical manifestation of their forgotten past.
Emery is drawn to him as a moth is to the flame, recognizing instinctively that he's dangerous, yet somehow necessary for her.
She keeps trying to figure out why he resents her so much, driven by these fragmented memories and feelings. She has dreams and intrusive thoughts about him that she herself describes as lewd and twisted.
Right, and she uses hints to call his bluff. She notes that his body was so detailed and familiar in her dreams, suggesting a deep physical intimacy she no longer recalls, but which her subconscious, retains.
And we get these small, heartbreaking, physical manifestations of their past closeness that just cut right through all the cruelty.
We do. Cameron notes she still has her signature silver hair, and he still carries the physical scars of their life together. His own scarred and crooked nose, his slight limp.
There's that one truly crucial moment before a mission where Maury gently combs and braids her hair for her.
That small, soft moment of care just cuts through his cruelty, and it's a momentary confirmation of the intimacy she suspects. It leads her to trust that he won't hurt her, at least not in that moment.
He struggles so much to maintain his distance. He admits in his own thoughts that he's starved for her attention and is incredibly greedy for her longing gaze.
And when he braids her hair, he accidentally slips up. He confirms their past. He tells her she used to always braid her hair, and when her hand was injured, he would do it for her.
That is a major admission of their past domestic closeness that he immediately tries to walk back. But it confirms her growing suspicions that their relationship was far deeper than just squad mates.
And when she desperately asks him to tell her one thing she forgot, he fights it. He knows that every shared memory increases the risk of her recall, and with it, the crushing realization of his betrayal.
And the amnesia does begin to break later on, doesn't it? When she's briefly returned to her father's custody, the memory of her mother and the poisoner Bryce resurface.
Yes, and she starts putting the pieces together, forcing her father, Gregory Mevistelli, to confront the memory of who hit her across the head if it wasn't Bryce.
And that realization is just horrific for her. She realizes that Cameron, the one who saved her and carried her back to the bunker, the one she feels that dangerous magnetic pull toward, is the same one who caused her memory loss.
She feels profoundly stupid for having trusted his cold stares, which she now interprets as regret that he didn't finish her off.
This incredibly complex relationship is compounded and arguably only made possible by the intense biological enhancements they are all forced to undergo.
And that brings us to Section 3. Enhanced warfare, the science of the death pills. The Dark Forces soldiers aren't just highly trained, they are test subjects for experimental drugs and injections.
Specifically, the infamous death pills and the Series Z injections. This is where we see the Dark Forces' core philosophy. View the human body as a disposable, functional object.
The advantages provided by these drugs are terrifyingly effective and, necessary for their high-risk operations. The drugs create soldiers who don't feel pain.
Emery notes this in total disbelief. She survives a gunshot and multiple cracked ribs without flinching, saying she wasn't sure if being shot would be painless, but it really does work.
This chemical cocktail creates soldiers who are twice as lethal, unstoppable, and essentially fearless because the physical cost of injury is just temporarily erased.
But the physical and mental cost is, well, it's catastrophic. The side effects reveal the depth of the betrayal by the Dark Forces command.
Emery starts experiencing dark, almost black, blood, alongside restless dreams and an inability to truly rest. She is wide awake, constantly vigilant, and chemically altered.
And Maury's former side effects included severe mental instability, losing control entirely, entering a dissociative state. The progression of symptoms is frighteningly rapid.
Emery begins coughing up blood within days or weeks, a severe symptom that Maury recognizes immediately. He confirms she needs a specific stabilizing shot for the death pills series.
Which makes their dependency on the Dark Forces complete. Only the organization can stabilize the lethal side effects of their own medicine.
And to ensure the drugs haven't caused total mental collapse, the soldiers are constantly subjected to specialized testing. Emery undergoes a VR simulation designed specifically geared at triggering your response to danger.
Making absolutely sure her brain isn't deteriorating due to the drugs.
And in a dark twist on their relationship, Maury, or at least a digital clone of him, is used as the trigger in the simulation. This leads to a violent knife fight where she is forced to stab him in the simulation.
This process isn't just testing, it's conditioning. It's conditioning her to kill the one person she trusts most, revealing the commander's willingness to sacrifice any emotional bond in favor of efficiency.
And this inherent risk of the enhancement, the loss of control, manifests acutely in Cameron. When he takes a second dose to manage the return of the side effects, he risks losing control entirely.
He describes this visceral feeling of needing to tear into his forearm muscles and rearrange the parts, a literal manifestation of internal destructive energy that has to be released.
Which leads to that extraordinary, bizarre moment of intimacy. Emery helps snap him out of the mania, not with violence, but by forcing a redirection of his craving. She puts her fingers in his mouth.
He shifts his volatile energy toward her and away from self-destruction. It confirms that his deep, twisted attraction to her is the one thing that can tether him to reality. It's a defining moment of their volatile, codependent relationship.
It's also crucial to note how these drugs don't just create a new killer, they mirror and amplify Emery's dark past. Before the Dark Forces, she was her father's executioner, referred to ominously as MB.
And her mentor, Reed, taught her the art of killing. And this art was truly grotesque.
It was. Reed encouraged her to put craft into her actions. She wouldn't just kill, she would pose her victims melancholically in lonely positions, always with pink X's on their eyelids.
The source notes that the longer she was the executioner, the more grotesque her creations became. The new drugs and the Dark Forces training don't just make her a better soldier.
They chemically reconnect her to the horrifying efficiency and artistic darkness of her forgotten killer self. Which is why she feels that familiar itch and insatiable need to continue during her military missions. The Dark Forces found a functional monster and simply enhanced it.
The moment she steps back into the field, she is tapping into this subconscious, deadly identity. That lethal efficiency sets the stage for the absolute web of lies that defines the next section, the web of betrayal and the fight for survival.
Right, so the Fury Squad is tasked with this dangerous retrieval mission, finding a small, critical item, a flash drive that General Nolan wanted, and Captain Bridger has the highest interest in.
The importance of this seemingly small object hints at the deep political corruption operating within the Dark Forces.
Their deployment takes them to the Great Basin hideout. This mission is where Emery truly embraces her legal initiative. The plan called for a diversion, but Emery uses explosives and smoker flares.
Specifically pink smoke.
Yes, pink smoke, to blow up the entire valley, creating chaos far beyond the plan.
And this act, though it's pure insubordination, absolutely delights Maury. It confirms their compatibility in chaos. They're not just following orders, they are creatively embracing destruction.
Unfortunately, this spectacular success leads directly to Emery's capture by her father, Gregory Mavistelli, and her former mentor, Reed.
And Mavistelli is revealed not just as a criminal, but as a powerful trade lord in the underworld. We immediately realize the Dark Forces are not separate from that world.
Not at all. The sources strongly suggest that Mavistelli is deeply entwined with the Dark Forces command. It's noted that his headquarters shares architecture with their bunkers, potentially confirming a corrupt connection through General Nolan.
Mavistelli's goal was transparent. Retrieving Emery, his highly trained and now chemically enhanced asset, and gaining access to the death pills formula for his global trade empire.
Which confirms that the experimental drugs are the key leverage point between the military structure and the organized crime network, a currency more valuable than money.
The narrative then just shifts into this chaotic flurry of revelations during the rescue attempt. Cameron is captured and tortured by Mavistelli to find out who he works for.
And during the torture, Cameron reveals a massive internal secret of the Dark Forces. Lieutenant Eric is Mavistelli's half-brother, Bellaric.
Wow. And on top of that, the flash drive that Fury risked their lives for.
Oh.
It wasn't a weapon or a formula.
No. It contained data on Mavistelli's hideouts and trade locations, giving the Dark Forces massive leverage. The entire mission was a political chess move designed to destabilize the criminal underworld for the Dark Forces' benefit.
And the familial betrayal is confirmed when Eric Bellaric admits his role. He confirms he's Emery's uncle and that he had previously tried to help her and her mother escape Mavistelli's empire.
He cut ties when he couldn't risk revealing his role in the Dark Forces, but his goal now is purely opportunistic. overthrowing Greg and claiming his assets for the Dark Forces, effectively inheriting a new arsenal and avenue of ports and property.
This elevates the stakes so far beyond a standard military mission. We see that the line between the military and the criminal underworld is just non-existent.
And family ties are simply tools for power consolidation. Eric wasn't trying to save Emery. He was trying to use her as bait to facilitate a hostile takeover of a rival empire that just so happened to be run by his half-brother.
This betrayal from within the familial structure is immediately followed by the ultimate institutional betrayal from the top brass.
General Nolan and Captain Bridger never intended for Fury Squad to return. Micah, the hacker, discovers the chilling, critical truth.
Their death report has already been created. They were deemed corrupted and disposable, meant to be eliminated after they secured the necessary data to defeat Mavistelli.
They were operating on a pre-approved termination timeline.
And this realization hits Cameron especially hard because of his personal ambition. He's separately offered a promotion by Nolan to Sergeant Mortem of the Haiti Squad. This was his longtime goal.
But the condition is the ethical crucible of his life. Accepting Bridger's written order to exterminate the Fury Squad after Mavistelli is dead.
This forces Cameron to choose between achieving his lifelong ambition, which would secure him a place among the untouchable elite, and Emery, Thomas, and Gage.
And he realizes his desire for the rank is nothing compared to his complicated, toxic, yet undeniably deep connection to Emery.
The danger is immediate. The Riet Squad, those Terminators we discussed earlier, are positioned nearby to handle any problems.
They're effectively the execution team if Fury tries to escape or refuses the kill order. The squad is utterly trapped between the criminal enemy they're supposed to be killing and their own murderous commanders.
The only lifeline comes from Micah, the hacker, who recognizes she's doomed, but chooses to sacrifice herself for her friends.
She gives Emery an untraceable phone containing a critical map that shows all Dark Forces trackers color-coded. Purple for hackers, red for soldiers, and blue for sleeper agents.
Officers placed in society like cops or government workers ready to activate. It's a huge reveal.
And she insists on flying back to the base immediately to avoid suspicion, knowing this act is a death sentence.
The raw emotional impact of this moment is huge. Emery watches the single purple dot Micah's tracker disappear over the map near Alaska and Russia, confirming her termination. That sacrifice seals the Fury Squad's defiance.
The loss of Micah is the moment of no return. It provides them with undeniable proof that they're targets, but it also gives them the intelligence they need to fight back. They are now officially rogue.
Which forces them into the final desperate confrontation. Section 5. The climax and the new empire.
The final mission is set up in remote Italy. The squad, knowing they are the intended victims, prepares for a skydiving deployment, acting as the designated kill team. But this time, they have their counterplan.
Cameron and Emery, along with Thomas and Gage, form a crucial alliance with some secondary characters. Damien, known as Red Turtle, and Wraith, or Herc.
Fellow Dark Forces soldiers who they bring into their confidence, expanding their chosen family. To survive, they needed to eliminate the tracking risk.
And they managed to secure unexpected aid from Reed, Emery's former mentor.
Reed agrees to help by extracting the trackers from Damien and Wraith using a scalpel and a small black box device, a painful but necessary procedure done under extreme duress.
Reed's intervention here is highly suspicious, isn't it? It confirms that he is playing a much larger game than just being Mavistelli's enforcer. He's strategically positioning pieces on the board.
Seemingly aligning himself with Emery, even if his ultimate loyalty remains completely obscured.
The mindset of the squad is just utterly fatalistic leading into this mission. Their high-altitude deployment involves a dangerous delay in pulling their parachutes below 3,000 feet just to test their limits.
This test isn't a military exercise. It's a grim, almost fatalistic reflection of their acceptance of death. When Thomas shouts the order to pull, they hold out, showing their collective insubordination and their shared defiance of the system that's trying to kill them.
They're testing their own limits as a final act of psychological rebellion before they face the enemy. The ultimate confrontation then takes place after Cameron and Emery move into the trade building.
Cameron is shot twice and hits his absolute wall. The cumulative effects of the death pills, combined with the extreme trauma and exhaustion, send him into a dissociative, aggressive state.
He becomes an uncontrollable weapon, a pure expression of the Series Z drugs, turning him into a lethal threat that can no longer distinguish friend from foe.
He can't even recognize Emery, the person he has tried so desperately to protect.
And this is the moment referenced directly in the title, My Blade, Your Back. Emery faces a chemically enhanced maniacal Cameron in incredibly close combat, and she refuses to kill him.
Despite the danger to herself.
Yeah.
But Cameron, momentarily aware of his escalating mania and his inability to stop himself from attacking her, forces the issue.
In a twisted, heartbreaking act of codependence, he guides her hand to stab him in the back, a small pressure below the nape of my neck.
The physical pain shocks him out of the mania, momentarily saving his life and hers.
But he is still critically wounded and unstable. And then suddenly, Reed appears dramatically, shoves Emery aside, and injects Cameron with a massive adrenaline syringe directly into his heart.
Stabilizing him, Reed then demands that Emery finish what you started, meaning the overthrow of the command structure.
That intervention by Reed is the pivotal moment that allows them to seize control. Cameron, immediately after stabilizing, turns his lethal attention to the orchestrator of the betrayal, Lieutenant Eric.
Belleric. Cameron uses his cane to execute his former lieutenant and half-brother by snapping his neck. He doesn't just kill him, he demands Eric admit he was going to kill the squad, punishing him for his betrayal.
Ensuring that the final act of violence is rooted in justice for the Fury Squad.
And Mavistelli himself is killed in the Forgotten City, Finis. This single action effectively decapitates both the corrupt Dark Forces operation and the rival Underworld Empire.
The Fury Squad has survived by eliminating both the source of their oppression and the target they were meant to kill.
So what does this extraordinary violent journey mean for the survivors? Fast forward 1 year later.
The remaining Fury Squad members, Emery, Cameron, Gage, Damien, and Wraith, have not only survived, they formed a new family and taken over Mavistelli's vast underworld empire.
They call themselves the Mortem family. They now reside primarily in sophisticated cities like London and Paris, managing an empire that has ironically brought a strange criminal peace between the families across the world.
And thriving business. Cameron carries the grief and the scars of their past year, but he and Emery are presented as happier than ever, celebrating their anniversary ruling the underworld.
Cameron gives a definitive toast, embracing their new identity. To us villains for taking over the underworld.
It's a profound shift in identity. They were created to be disposable weapons, and now they are the criminal elite. And that alliance with their former mentor, Reed, remains crucial.
It does. Reed remains strategically positioned on the inside of the Dark Forces, acting as their contact and partner. He assures Emery that General Nolan believes they perished, creating a useful illusion of death.
Reed, who never fully revealed his role, promised they would become the most powerful people in the world. And he delivered, cementing their new criminal dominance.
It's clear that the tools of their oppression, the lethal training, the chemical enhancements, the criminal network they were supposed to disrupt, became the precise tools of their freedom and their rise to power.
They went from being the hunted to being the hunters, eventually becoming the self-proclaimed villains in charge of the system that tried to eliminate them.
So this journey was defined by the recovery of self through amnesia, chemically induced lethality, surviving an ultimate betrayal, and forging a chosen family that ultimately became the new kings and queen of the underworld.
The profound irony here is the core analytical takeaway, isn't it? The people the Dark Forces consider failed experiments in disposable weapons, Mori and morphine, used the very tools and skills imposed upon them to destroy both of those corrupt empires.
They used the ability to operate without pain and kill with grotesque efficiency to destroy the legitimate military structures, compromised leadership, and the criminal empire they were meant to serve. They flipped the script completely.
And here's where it gets really interesting for you to think about as the listener. The source material ends with the survivors embracing their roles as the Mortem family, taking over the underworld and achieving a kind of peace through criminal dominance.
So if the only way to escape one dark empire is to build a new one, what price does that pay for the souls who used to long for something warmer, kinder, as Cameron once did?
Does true freedom require accepting the inherent darkness you were born into? Or is the presence of the chosen family, the Mortem family, enough to make all that darkness worthwhile?
And think about the alliance they rely on. Reed, the man who taught Emery her horrific art and who helped them escape, remains inside the Dark Forces, gaining power and assuring them Nolan thinks they're dead.
So what happens when the only person you trust, your underworld partner, is still actively working for the enemy you overthrew, gaining power within the very structure you promised to dismantle?
That tension, that necessary trust in a known snake, has to define the Mortem family's future and the stability of their new empire. A fascinating cliffhanger based entirely on compromised alliances.
A lot to unpack, but we got to the heart of My Blade, You're Back. We'll catch you next time for the next deep dive.